Okay, so it's time once again to have our Friday class, Friday Zoomy class, and we are still under cluster one. There are a lot of topics that we could talk about. It's absolutely my most favorite of all clusters, and it's about emotional intelligence and communication. Last time I had a video and I presented about particularly about the attributes of emotionally intelligent people. And I will review what was taken up on that video just for the ones who've not seen it. And I will proceed with more tips and strategies on how you could work on these attributes. As they say, attributes are things that you can, that you're born with. That is true. However, it isn't hopeless. You can actually improve your competence. You can work to be more emotionally intelligent. So that is what we're going to discuss today. So we're going to get into the nitty-gritty of the attributes of emotionally intelligent people. So yes, we have to ask ourselves that question. Once again, self-awareness is extremely important. We can't go on and learn something if we do not know, our starting point. So if you don't know where you've been and only keep on thinking about where you're going, then there is a chance that you may not be setting very smart, specific and achievable and relative goals for yourself, and you won't be able to plan your timelines properly because you don't know exactly what you need to get there. So you kind of know what you have first, then you can identify what you need to get to your final destination. And in this case, it is about becoming more emotionally intelligent. So think about it. Are you self-aware? How self-aware are you? Were there moments when someone would say, you look stressed? Or someone who would have commented that, oh, you appear to be very aloof. And you said, really? I didn't even know that. So your self-awareness is not only observed by the person, by the individual, but feedback from other people can really help in letting you know if there is room for improvement to become more self-aware. Self-management is how you manage your emotions and your thoughts. And you need to be socially aware. You have the ability to know what other people's values, beliefs, approaches are. And then be able to manage your relationship with them, how you could adapt your style to others. In fact, people are so emotionally intelligent that they have the ability to mediate beautifully in conflict. They're always the ones who try to fix things and resolve things between people who are in conflict. So those are signs that the emotional intelligence of that person is pretty high, is when they become the go-to to fix conflict. Okay, so we mentioned this the last time, but it is absolutely something that you could drive towards building. It's your competence to be self-aware, to manage yourself better, to be more socially aware, and to manage relationships better. So 2 categories. It's about recognition. Okay, so you have to know first. It's the knowledge bit, and then you apply what you know to regulate, okay, or to manage. And that's what we do as leaders and managers. We gather the information, we analyze it, and then we apply it. Okay, so it's the same thing. That's the process for emotional intelligence. Let's start with the first one, self-awareness. Okay, so self-awareness is pretty much all about, sorry about that, it's all about, do you actually see what how others see you, or the person that you see in the mirror, is it based on facts or is it somewhat distorted? Okay. Now, the issue with lack of self-awareness would be about a distorted sense of self-worth, and also the inability to make the decisions, okay, that are effective in your situation, the appropriate decisions. There is no way to become more self-aware but to reflect as much as possible. So you hear this word very often, reflecting, okay? And the moment you hear that word or you see that word reflect, you will have a visual of what that means. So it's you probably looking up and writing down on something or going somewhere else in a nice, nice place and start thinking about what's happened to you before. So reflection is about thoughts, pretty much. But there's more to it than just the exercise of thinking and thinking of the past. Okay. But there's a logical and biological reason to when you are to reflect. Why do we reflect? To increase self-awareness. Now, we live our days very quickly because we are, as human beings, we have developed coping strategies based on our current knowledge and our current capabilities, and our skills and the experience that we have. So the more we do of something, the more unconscious we do it. And one of those activities that human beings do would be thinking. Our thoughts actually run so fast we couldn't even capture them. So our minds use thoughts as a way to arrive to something, to a decision, on what to feel and what to do. Reflecting, when you're rewinding something back, you are challenging your thoughts. You are checking whether what you have is exactly what happened, or do you have enough of it, or you don't have enough of it. It's like, okay, before we go ahead, let's move back a bit. So your brain starts to work on your memory. And to be able to collect the memory is actually good brain exercise. You're working on your memory. So just imagine that your brain has different pockets and different functions, of course, and memory is one of them. So you are telling your brain, can you go and check my memory if I've got that right? Okay. So you go back. So you slow down the activity of your brain by going back and allowing it to try to do a check and balance. You see, the brain is very complex. What it does is when you look at something, your brain just automatically puts that in your memory. Now, as that memory builds, it actually goes through, okay, remember the what it looked like, remember the colors, the shape, the smell, the feeling, how you felt, what you were reacting, what was happening at that moment in time, where you were. So all of this just happening quickly by itself. You don't have to tell it to do that. It just does it. And sometimes our brain, before it stores that memory, seem to have connections with similar things for something. If, say, for example, it's like when you see a red, like a car, like an old car, and reminds you of your dad. It doesn't just store the car that you saw or that you see at that moment, it also actually starts to recall a memory that's attached to that car. And then your memory for that moment is you looking at a car, remembering your dad, but your dad wasn't there, right? So you see how complex it is. It just connects very quickly. So when you reflect, you then have a chance to then go, okay, compartmentalize things that you've seen. Was it right that I recalled this when I saw this? Maybe not. Cut the connection, because in your brain, when you reflect, memories come in connections. So all these neurons are connecting. So for you to say no, to have that choice to say no, it shouldn't be in that same memory bank. You're cutting that and you're filtering what you remember. So reflection is a very powerful way for the brain to do a filter and to slow things down, which is what you're going to need, because we don't actually make conscious decisions for everything that we do in our day. Asking for feedback, once again, is important. The more feedback you ask, the more perceptions you take. Remember, having different perceptions of things increase your social awareness. And why do we need it? To become more emotionally intelligent. So for you to not accept feedback, you're denying yourself of improving or working on your emotional intelligence. People have different ways of thinking of things. There are different perceptions. So asking for feedback and somebody giving us feedback is actually a very positive experience. It will only make you become more emotionally intelligent. So think about that the next time somebody criticizes you and you feel bad about it. Okay, so think about it as something more constructive than destructive. Expose yourself to different people and environment, because the more you see others, you have a tendency to compare yourself. And though it is not recommended in terms of the sense of self-worth comparison, but who are we really, really misleading? We are social people. We're a social species. You know, it is part of our survival strategy to see if we fit or we blend in or we're different. So when you expose yourself to different people and environment, you'll have a tendency to actually bounce that light back to yourself and see, okay, can I also do that? Is there a way that I can do that? Or I don't want to do that, you know? So it's like it encourages and motivates you to bounce that back to yourself and be aware. As well as you might actually have a perception of yourself thinking that you're different when you're not, you know? So all this will encourage more discoveries about yourself, and where you belong and where you don't belong, and what you really love and not like to do. So watch yourself. Like, why do people, when like we're having this session right now, instead of me looking at the camera, I'm always looking at myself. It's not hard to watch yourself. It's actually quite natural. You know, you pass by a shopping window and you look at the window looking at yourself, not the person, not the item behind it. So, but what I'm saying is watching yourself consciously. It's about knowing what you're looking for when you're watching yourself in purposeful. Okay. So watching yourself, say, okay, I kind of see how I sound or how I look when I'm sad or I'm stressed. You know, maybe I need to know, so I'm being more aware and I can stop myself from going forward when really it's not a true reflection of how I feel from inside. Sometimes our behaviors are learned. It may not be appropriate to how we feel, like exactly to a T. So we might need to make adjustments, you know, and then define your emotions. That is one big thing. There are so many words that define emotions, and all we could remember is happy, sad, glad, mad, surprised, and shocked. Actually, there's a lot of description and terminology, and each emotion has different levels. They're all different. So it's good for us to put a word behind what we feel, and then we can then create an appropriate reaction or expression to that emotion, you know, and be open to different perspectives. Have the courage to see the truth, because, you know, without it, then your response would be unsustainable. and then get support. So as I mentioned, there are so many words that belong to what you call the emotions, okay? And have a look at it. There's not just one way of saying that you're sad. You can say maybe you're sad because you feel helpless. Maybe you're sad because you feel remorse for someone or empathy for someone, or there's so many different words from just what we learned in our younger years. So have a look at that. And when you say I feel and you come up with I'm sad, maybe try to explore a little bit more and look at this chart and ask yourself, is there another way of describing that? How may I look if I was in grief? Or how different would I look if I was lonely? You see, when you're good at identifying specific emotions, you would then be more capable of communicating accurately how you feel from the inside. And that's so important in communicating, even with a partner, especially with a close, the ones who live with us, the family and friends and our partners. You have to shout out, but you have to teach them, this is who I am. This is how I look like when I feel this. And we expect that other people can pick it up without us telling them. And we don't even recognize ourselves when we are feeling something and how we're expressing it to other people. So be self-aware, learn how you exactly feel, learn how you exactly should look like, and how you should behave to communicate that to others. When you're reflecting, you can use these questions. And then you have a bunch of things that you will discover about yourself. And what you would really benefit from discovering from reflection and asking for feedback on all those different strategies is to, number one, know what your limitations are. Remember, we are all different biologically. We are born with what we have genetically, but we can work on filling the gaps afterwards. But at the end of the day, we're all built differently and we have our limitations. If you recognize your own limitations and you create a plan on how you're going to cope with it and what other things you can do, okay, instead of forcing yourself to go unreasonably beyond your limits, which will then create disappointment, frustration, stress, anxiety, and whatever it is, you start accepting it at face value. You look at it and then go, okay, that's my limit. What else can I do? It's not forcing the impossible. Or maybe you can then say, okay, that's my limit. What can I do laterally? Or is there something that I can do to push that limit? Is it worth my time to stretch that? So really knowing what your limits are, embracing it. What triggers emotions for you, the most intense emotions for you? What are your cues? When you say cues, is what does it look like when you're feeling that emotion? What does it feel like when you're feeling that emotion? Like me, my emotional cues is when I'm really embarrassed, I feel restless and I feel warm. Actually, I feel warm. My ears would start turning red. It's my emotional cue, that I'm getting embarrassed. It's like a siren. So that's telling me sometimes we behave before we realize we're actually feeling it, So an emotional cue, when you're so unaware of where you are in terms of your feelings and your emotions, our physical or our body actually tells us things, and then we think of how we were feeling, So emotional cues is quite good. It stops you from snowballing. In other words, makes you stop and wait a minute. I'm feeling this way. Why am I feeling this way? So you have that opportunity if you're very much aware of your emotional cues. Your boundaries and limits. Okay. Limit is yourself, meaning your limitation in terms of your capability and your tolerance. Boundaries is where you create a line between you and other people. So, this is my safety circle. This is my space. This is how I feel safe. So you need to know what your boundaries are. So you understand, and so you know what you can tell other people. If you don't, you can't even describe what your boundaries are. If you can't identify what your boundaries are, how do you expect people to respect it? Right? So boundaries. And then your capabilities, absolutely important, okay, to know it so you can maximize what you already have, then you start discovering realistic goals because you know your limits and you know your boundaries and you know your capabilities. You can then create goals that will be more realistic for you to achieve at particular time frames, and then the values is extremely important. We learned our values from growing up and even the culture, and we hold those values subconsciously as we make decisions in life. But sometimes life changes, not sometimes, all the time, life changes. Our situation changes, place changes, people we love change, So we might get stuck on old values that are inappropriate for where we are in life. And that's why they say every 5 years, check your values, have a values check. See if those values that you so strongly felt before, that has kept you feel safe before, is actually still has that same intensity. Maybe it's changed. Maybe you had a realization that that value actually doesn't exist or shouldn't apply to you anymore. An example for me was a few years back, I so valued structure. Like, I want everything planned. I can't go out to, say, on a long or on a road trip without planning where I'm going to stay, what time I'm going to go, what I'm going to bring. But now I find myself in my late 40s to be more open, to be more spontaneous. I find it exciting and I find more value in that than having to predetermine everything. So I've changed. So my values have adjusted, right? So when that happens, a lot of things then start coming back. It all relates, it all connects, so that's self-awareness. Now, self-management is all going to be about being able to realize the strategies that are effective for you in controlling your thoughts, emotions, and behavior. And I have to say it, there are 3 things that you need to manage. So if you blame yourself, if you criticize yourself for not being able to manage other people so well, and you don't really have the full grasp of how hard it is to actually manage yourself, it is quite unreasonable to expect more, so being able to manage yourself first before you manage others is actually quite logical. It's something that that's reasonable. Now, when you process self-regulation, you need to know how to filter your emotional state so then you can give the appropriate response. Now, why is this important? Remember our memory, Mr. Memory in our brain? When you see something, hear something, smell something, it automatically gives us memories. And these memories are not filtered. It includes the emotions we felt at that time. Have you had any experience that you felt so angry about something so trivial? You're surprised at how intensely you felt when it was such a simple occurrence. It's because your memory has given and packed with it other things that were not applicable for that moment. So first thing is, why do I feel so angry? Okay, if you're very self-aware and you know that you're you can feel the difference between just being angry and being enraged. Once you catch that, you get your emotional cues, your physical cues, it feels, I am enraged. I'm not just angry, I'm enraged. So the appropriate name for that emotion. You then go, this is what I saw. This is what I have now. Why am I feeling this way? And then you kind of filter that. You start thinking, oh my God, what is it? As a brain, disconnect. That has nothing to do with, it's exactly what it is, just what it is right now. It has nothing to do with the past. This is what it is. You start filtering it. And then when you respond, you're giving the appropriate response based on the facts. Now, to actually do self-management, there are strategies that are so effective, and it's been used for years worldwide. And one of them is called cognitive behavioral therapy. And I'm pretty sure you've heard of that. This is a strategy that's scientifically proven to help people through mental illness. Not just that, but it actually helps in our thought process. So the thoughts, this is the idea of CBT, or cognitive behavioral therapy. Thoughts create feelings, and feelings create behaviors. That is the natural process, not the other way around. Okay, so remember this: thought, feelings, behavior. Now, if you have the wrong thought or the wrong memory is in there, you're going to have the wrong feeling and you're going to have the wrong behavior. So it is, the key here is to be able to recognize your thoughts. Slow it down. Okay, how do we slow it down? Oh God, there's so many things you can do, but I'm pretty sure you've heard of one of them. It's called mindfulness. It's about living at the present, knowing what's in front of us, not the baggage, excess baggage. It's not meant to be carried over with that particular thing. It's about being able to challenge our thoughts and go to a more rational way of processing our thoughts. And then matching the appropriate feeling for that, the level, and then behaving as a consequence. So you need to stop, detach, think, and analyze. Find ways of being able to stop time just so to remind yourself to live in the present. That's why mindfulness and breathing exercise is very, very helpful, because when the heart pumps quickly, it means that it's already responding to a thought. It's already behaving. Okay, so our body is behaving. It has already gone through two other steps, which is the thought and the feeling and then the behavior. So you kind of go, okay, why is my heart pumping? What was I feeling? Not what I was thinking. What was I feeling? I was feeling upset. My heart's pumping, so I'm feeling upset. Why did I feel that feeling? What were the thoughts in my head at that time? And then you start writing down all these statements, and then, oh, that's it. That's why, that's why. Well, that's silly. I shouldn't have thought about that. And you start breathing and then telling your body, okay, that's fine. It's okay. That was wrong. Okay. So, well, not wrong, not appropriate. So let's adjust. And you go back. So there you go. We've covered those two. I promise the next ones are going to be quick. When you develop your way of being more aware about yourself and you now can manage yourself, it's time for us to extend that capability to other people. Okay. So social awareness is about developing empathy. It's the feeling and being able to have a good awareness of how different people are. An objective awareness. Okay. So different cultures have different ways of thinking, and the languages and identities and traditions and values and histories. You need to know that, because it all gives you all these tips on that memory that we're talking about. Okay, so we judge people about their behavior, but have we even stopped ourselves to think they behave this way because they feel this way? I wonder, when they felt that way, what were they thinking? And how did they come up with that thought? Where did that memory come from? It'll be from possibly a previous experience that would be similar to this. I wonder if they got the thoughts right. So you start respecting it as a process, not by just judging, but really asking even more questions to understand that person, so you can have the appropriate thought of that person. You feel appropriately for that person, and you will respond and behave appropriately to that person. Awareness of how individuals and group cooperate toward achieving common goals and ideas. So about the motivation of people, how do people get together? How can we blend things together of all the differences that we've got? Awareness of what sort of support is out there. We may be different, but we can also support each other, because what I have may be something you don't have, and what you don't have may be something that I might love to have. So it's that banter. It's the awareness that we all can exist harmoniously, or even not harmoniously, but just exist as people. And then when you're aware about these differences and you're more open to different perceptions and you're no longer ignorant and arrogant at the same time, you then extend that motivation to be able to start a relationship, maintain a relationship, even build stronger relationships. So it is right to say that people who lack self-awareness, people who lack the ability to control their emotions and give the appropriate response to people and events, and people who lack knowledge and awareness of how different perceptions exist. And there's not one way or my highway kind of thing, but there's an objective reason why people think and behave the way they do. Then if we don't have that full awareness, how are you to expect to manage it? It's like if you don't know your staff, how do you expect to manage them effectively? So you would need skills to be able to learn how to manage relationships. Apart from those three things that I've just mentioned, there are soft skills that, you go and learn something about it. Learn something about verbal and body communication, or nonverbal communication, because that's the emotional cues, remember. How do you communicate yourself accurately? And when you do get something, how do you interpret that from them? And to be able to get that in your memory and say, okay, this is from that. You're processing it properly, not just quickly assuming things. So communication is not just about being able to say something. It's about taking something and taking messages. How are you processing that? So it's communication, verbal and nonverbal. Negotiation and persuasion. Okay, so we know that it's a huge process to be able to think accurately or more rationally, and then to be able to feel the right way and to behave the right way, appropriately. All right. I'm not going to say right, because there's not right or wrong. It's the appropriateness based on your situation. Okay. So if you can't do that, how are you? You need to be able to create a strategy on how to lead that person to realize what so you can, what motivates that person, how it affects that person. Then if you're able to negotiate so they can see the benefit of that particular choice would be for them. So negotiation and persuasion, rapport building, it is a skill. Some people are not very good at small talk, but rapport building is quite good because it makes a lot of people feel comfortable and more open to you. And when they're open, you've got the information they need to be able to formulate the right thoughts, so on and so forth, right? So rapport building is important. And then you've got conflict management. So what sort of appropriate decisions are there for managing conflict? And would you believe that even if you feel helpless and you've not done anything, you've actually made a subconscious choice in your approach to conflict management? There are actually four. Avoid, accommodate, compete, or collaborate. Okay. So actually, yeah. So you've got those ones. And then you've got leadership, which is why you're here. Why is leadership so important in relationship management? Because under leadership, it's all about managing people and making them perform at the best of their ability. It has nothing to do with conflict management. It's nothing to do with rapport, but obviously that responsibility, the skill, so many different combinations of skills to be able to inspire people to do the best that they could do, for the good of, your team. So those things are things that you can learn, and good job, because you've now learned more about emotional intelligence and you're on the right track. You can tick off leadership there because you are doing something to improve your emotional intelligence. I hope that you continue to build on your emotional intelligence. I've given you a lot of suggestions. We've covered self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, and relationship management in this video. I could talk all day and all week about emotional intelligence, but at the end of the day, take it one step at a time. And my question to you is, how well do you know yourself? Just start with that question, and it will start to reveal a lot of things about you, and will open so many windows of opportunity to become the better version of yourself. So thank you very much for spending time with me. I know it's been, how long has it been since I started? About nearly 40 minutes. But I hope that you got the most value in learning about the attributes of emotionally intelligent people. And I know you're on your way. Thank you so much. And the next time for the next video.